Anybody hear me out there? Flip over here. Stream is good. Got a handful of people. That's good. Joanne Rogers. Hello, how are you, my dear? Excellent. Good, good. Okay, my Kevin hears you. Yeah, I know. You got to get that straightened away, brother. It's hard for me to remember that it's a man on the line when it's a picture of a woman I'm looking at. Woman's face. But I'll get used to it one way or the other. Not a problem. Ready for some slow blues. Eric, man, good to hear from you. Thanks for chiming in. Tell me how the audio sounds, how my vocal is good. I'm going to check it through my headphones. See if it's coming through. Yep, seems to be. Oh, might have just clicked out right there. I always have a little trouble with it. Check, check. There we go. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Deal with it. All right. Now I know where I stand. You're in for it now, sir. Okay, I don't need these anymore. Oh, it just came in again. Goes out, comes in. I think the sound is perfect. I think the interwebs is overwhelmed right now. Let's hope it stays healthy. Tony, good man, thumbs up. All is well. There, it just came back in, then it goes out, then it comes in, then it goes out. Not sure why that's happening. There we go. Maybe what I should do is have as a backup my laptop. Not my laptop, my desktop audio. Let me go here. Everything seems to be going through okay. That way. Check, check, check. Just clipped out a bit. Then it's back. And then it clips out a bit. Not sure why that's happening. That's a first. Tell me if you can hear the guitar. Get my sleeve up here. Pull back a bit. How's that? And the last thing I want you to check for me. I can see your comments, Sheila. Oh my gosh. Guitar sounds fine, Eric. Guitar is good. Voice goes in and out. When it goes out, Eric, is it completely out? Or is it just goes down in volume? I hear it just go out right now. And then it comes back. I may need a new mic. There, it might be back. Guitar's good. Joanna, there she is, tuning in. So how'd you figure it out, Sheila? What was the solution? %10 left, then back to 100%. Okay, so I'm going to do something here. First thing I'm going to do, though, is just loosen up the cable. See if that helps any. The other thing I'm going to do is I am going to enable my webcam mic so that at least it picks up when desktop audio. Let's use that one. Last thing I want you to listen to is a little bit of a backing track. There, it just went out and it just came back. I can hear it in the headphones. So tell me if you could hear that. I'll go back to the chat. Mic is fine for me. Yeah, I can hear it clipping in and out though. Hey Mike? I didn't figure it out yet. Just switched from Safari to Chrome. Oh, my mic just came back in and then it just went out. This really sucks. So what I need to know, Eric noticed this, if the mic goes out, does it go out completely flat and you can't hear me? I'm just moving my lips, or do you still hear a little bit of me? Let me know that. Everything's up and powered. There, I've lost it again. There, and it's back. See, it's weird. Sounds good. Thank you, Scott. Well, yes. Can you test the balance between your guitar and the track? Last time the track was too loud. Yeah, I brought the track down this time. So let me put the track on and I'll do some playing. Perfect. Thank you, Eric. Sheila, I can hear it's just not loud. Can hear it's just not loud. What can you hear that's just not loud? My mic? This? Or my guitar? Or the track? This is when, people that do these live sessions sort of more professionally have a whole team of people behind them monitoring this stuff. Kevin says it's okay here. Okay, well, we'll just have to kind of work with what I've got. Could also be as you know, excuse my voice, so many people are on the web right now, and especially at this time as they get home from work. And Eric, yep. And so, could be just not enough bandwidth. Hard to say. Maybe I'll keep my headphones on just so I can monitor it and see how things go. Guitar good. I'm in mono. Yep. I am in mono. Tony says A-okay. Awesome. And who knows? We may get lucky. Digital gods may. Sometimes the sound gets soft, but then it comes back. Sounds good now. Yeah, I know that, Sheila, but which sound? Is it everything? The guitar and the vocal? Might be both. There, you might have just gone soft. Then maybe it just came back. Nope, then I lost it again. Technical difficulties. Check, check, check. Meters are reading fine. Okay, well, we'll work with what we have. But thanks, guys, for that feedback. I've got the mic now, and then I don't. Let me try that. How does that sound? How does that sound? Oh, I just lost it again. Check, check. Check, check. Say. And check the levels. Sorry about this, folks. It happens. I don't want that one. I want the cardioid. I want the cardioid. I can hear it. Just the mic, just the vocal. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's weird. I've got it. Okay. How does it sound now? That'll be the last time I'll ask and bore you guys with it. Nope, checked all the cables. Every day, check the cables. Maybe I'll just have to go out and buy a new mic. There, just came back. And then it'll go. No rhyme or reason. I'm not going to move it, though. I'm going to leave it right there. Okay, guys, forget it. What about the candles? Do you mean cables or candles? I'm not sure what you mean, Tony. I'm assuming it's cable, but candles. Man, are you saying I need some candles in my backdrop? Is that what you're telling me? Live, man. Live is full of glitches. Roll with it. Okay. Let me move over here. All right, folks. Steve Dempster Guitar Studio, back again. Wow. What is this? The the 6th session? I can't remember now. Just going live, doing some sessions while everybody's home. Always inviting your feedback for what you'd like me to cover. Otherwise, you get stuck with what I want to cover. Kind of things I think you might need. So this is where we're at. Hope you're doing well and you're abiding by the health agency rules of social distancing. I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing that phrase. I hope to never have to hear it again. What concerns me is how this is going to change people's behavior even when they don't need to social distance anymore. I mean, is there going to be this ongoing paranoia about it, such that shaking hands has just become not something you do anymore? It's going to be elbow bumps or bowing or, hey man, I don't know. I'm just trying to stay a bit light about the whole thing, not to get too drawn down. So I do hope everybody's doing well. I'm assuming if you're here, you're doing well. And that's cool. All right. You see upon the screen, you should anyway, the infamous, overused, but cherished form of the A minor pentatonic scale. It's called A minor, because the foundation of it, if I can just show you this here are the notes of the same thing. I do want you to also know, you should have an awareness of that. When I talk about this stuff, some people have commented, like when you're soloing, when you're doing things, are you seeing the notes flashing through your brain as your fingers are moving along the fretboard? I know I'm out of the frame there. I'll pull back a bit here. And, how are you thinking about it? The quick answer is, of course not. Your fingers are moving according to the way you've trained them, wherever you're going on the fretboard. What is, at least in my head, it's this kind of a thing. If I were playing that particular shape, while I'm on it, I am not so caught up in it that I can't think for a second about where I'm going elsewhere. I can. My point is I can think while I'm on that scale about where else I want to go. And that means that the scale itself is so well worn at this point that my brain can go somewhere else and plan something else. That's one approach. The other is, yes, we are thinking shapes, so I may be envisioning a new form of the same scale that I could go to, higher up the board, lower down the board, whatever. I may connect the two together using the notes of the scale itself. I may be planning certain target notes to hit as they relate to the chord that's in place. And in fact, we're going to talk about that this afternoon. It's the afternoon where I am, anyway. Again, I think it's Tony, man. He's pushing it. He's going past his bedtime, I think. And so, the quick answer is no, of course. I'm not thinking about all the notes all the time. And so people will say to me, so why do we need to know the notes? Well, because you need, it would be the equivalent, I like metaphor, it would be the equivalent of wondering how somebody's going to build a brick wall, but in a sense they don't understand the bricks. Like if you're going to put something together, mortar, I know I'm touching my face. Everybody's telling me stop touching my face. I'm not sick. I'm not passing anything around. I'm in the house. I'm not out and about. It's kind of like knowing the bricks and then the mortar that puts them together. If you don't have a sense of that, why do you think the brick wall is going to work well? There's a certain way to lay those bricks, and you have to get used to that way. And it's the same kind of idea. But again, it's an old argument. You know your written alphabet, so you can read and write. And if you didn't know that, God forbid, I hope this is not any of you, you're considered illiterate. So how come the same isn't true in music? Music is really quite a language. It serves as a second language in some universities in the States, second language requirement for their undergraduate degree. So why don't we learn the building blocks of what we're using, scales in that case? So, you already know this. I'm a big fan of doing that. So most people know it this way. And of course, that's indicating the fingering. I'm sure you do not need to get me to teach you that. I think most people here are familiar with it. I am, of course, always encouraging notes because the discussion about, well, it's going to come up. I'll show it to you later on in the game. So this is what most people tend to think of when they think of A minor pentatonic. Fair enough. It's a good scale. It's good for the fingers. Has a lot of lick mileage in it that you can use. But let's just play a little bit. I'm just going to play. I'm going to pull up my track. I will check the meters as I play and make some typical adjustments for you, and hopefully they sound okay. So let's listen to the track itself. Bring that down a bit. So I'm going to use that scale. There we go. That sounded kind of cool. I like that. Felt good. I tend to find the scale degrees at least as important to know as the notes. Absolutely. All of it together. Eric is saying on the guitar he tends to find the scale degrees at least as important to know as the notes. All of it together is useful. Very useful. Knowing the notes helps me depending on what key. Yep, I get it. I find it difficult to stay in one place when playing like that, as I like finding connections. Yes, that's the whole point, right? It's kind of like um, if you have a broader vocabulary, people often will recognize that and say, oh, you're very articulate. You know how to communicate things in an effective, efficient manner. Same thing in music. If you have a broader sense of how one area of the fretboard connects to another, for whatever reason, um, then you can play. If you stay in one location, there's nothing wrong with that if that's a choice. But if you're staying there because that's the only place you know, fair enough. That could be where you're learning right now. That's fine. Um, but if it's the only place you go to because it's the place you go to because it's the place you go to every time you play using that scale, then of course you're putting some limitations on your playing, and we don't want to experience that. What about the candles? My little joke. Very cool. Okay, so I just wanted to basically just warm my fingers up because I'm cold. That's why I have my extra sweater on right now. So let me know how that sounded overall, and we can use that as a sound check, and I'll go from there. But levels seemed okay to me. Okay, we can assume that if you're using that scale, and we're talking about a minor blues, that we need some chords to play the minor blues. And I would like to ask you, what 3 chords are required as a starting point to play a minor blues? And I played those in the backing track. So even without the backing track going on doing its thing, you'd want to be aware as you're moving around that scale what chord is being played at what point in time. But you need to know what the chords are first. So get on the chat and let me know what 3 chords I'm going to need to play a basic minor blues. And I'm just going to fiddle around a little bit while you give me some answers. I like that. Mr. Joanne Kevin Rogers says A minor, D minor, E minor. Tony says D7, E7. Scott says 1, 3, 5. Eric says, yeah, of course. It doesn't have to be 7th chords, Eric. It could be triads, but either one is fine. I'm just being very generic. So we're talking about, he's referencing the 1, 4, 5. Mike says 1, 4, 5. Jerry says A7, D7, E7. So let's talk about this a bit. Now I can chat. Nice. Nice to see you, Carolyn. D7, E7 minor. Let's talk about this because clearly there are a number of varying perspectives on it. Okay, we'll backtrack and I'll say we are doing a blues in a minor blues. Let me put it that way. The session beforehand was a major blues. What's the difference? The difference would be this. In the major blues, I did that in the key of G. again, for simplicity reasons and for a basic demonstration of it, that's what I was focused on for there. You would be playing some kind of a dominant seventh chord, like G dominant 7, and then C dominant 7, and then D dominant 7. But the point here is that all three chords were dominant seventh chords. They weren't major chords, they weren't minor chords, they were dominant seventh chords, or just seventh chords. Excuse me, G7, C7, or D7. Anywhere you can play them on the board is fine. I'm looking at the chat while I'm chatting, so if I'm not in the camera, forgive me. Okay? Tony says flat third. See, I get this a lot. There's lots of terms that keep floating out of people's minds. And some of you got it right. I'm not debating that. But the vast majority of people, they have a vague sense that this little thing is happening and that little thing is happening. And they have picked this information up from wherever, and good. But it hasn't been organized into a solid, I think, confident experience. So in the previous session, we did a major blues. Now, the reason we call it a major blues is primarily because of the chords that were being played. Dominant chords mostly are dominant or are major in sound, except for one additional note that throws them into this new category called dominant seventh chords. So primarily they are major, hence we're doing a major blues. You already know that over that major blues chord progression, interestingly enough, not only can you play a G type of major scale, which is mostly major except for one odd note that makes it something called mixolydian. I do not want to confuse your brain with that. It's fundamentally major. So over this chord, this is from the previous session, over a G7, I could play this. And that whole thing looks like, feels like, almost sounds like a G major scale, which is this sound. But what I played is this. So I changed what would normally be an F sharp in the key of G, and I flattened it. I made it F natural. Okay? So I could play a major type of scale over the major blues. Interestingly enough, I can also play, as you probably already know, G minor pentatonic and or the blues scale, the G blues scale over that. It almost shouldn't work as far as harmonic knowledge goes, but it does. Our ears have grown accustomed to this sound, and we have come to really enjoy it. So in that instance, from a simplistic starting point, we could have used either a major scale or a minor scale of some sort to play over that. And you would have said to me, well, the three chords I need to play it, Steve, would be G7, C7, and D7. That's a traditional blues format. When we get to the minor blues, the chords change. Hence, it's called minor. So that in itself should give you a clue. If a major blues uses basically three major chords, essentially major, then when we go to play a minor blues, you need three minor chords. So for those of you, for now, that were telling me, a D7 or an E7 or an A7, no, not for a minor blues. Sometimes those chords will creep in, that type of chord, not those specific ones in this key. Sometimes that'll happen because music can get boring if you don't do weird and unexpected things. But by and large, the three chords, therefore, we're looking to use are minor chords. Knowing that, what would be the three minor chords that we need to hear in the background while somebody might be playing some bluesy stuff in their soloing? Some of you did get this. Kevin got it. Eric got it. He did it very officially, too, in terms of Roman numerals. 1, 4, 5 minor. These could be minor seventh chords. They don't have to be minor triads. Mike got it. Well, he got 1, 4, 5. Yep. Now, interesting. Okay, I'm telling you that they're minor chords. But by the way, where does the reference to 1, 4, 5 come from? Like I've also had people, I think was it, I can't see it, might have been Scott. Scott said 1, 3, 5. So I know what both of you are saying, at least I think I do. Scott is really saying that chords are built out of the 1, the 3, and the 5 from a scale. In other words, the first note of a scale, the third note, and the fifth note. That's how you combine them in thirds to make a chord. Whereas Mike is not referencing the individual notes of a chord by saying 1, 4, 5. He's referencing the type of chords that result in a particular scale so that you have the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord from a certain scale. And that's what we need. We need the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord from what scale? I know I'm pushing this a little bit. Carolyn has A minor, something else, and E minor. You're on the right track. A minor, D minor, E minor for Joanna. Yes, Tony, all major 1, 4, 5. All major 1, 4, 5 for a major key. They will not be major chords for a minor blues. It's a minor blues. You know this. Fundamentally, the chords are going to be minor. Okay, I'll let you off the hook now. And some of you did manage to get it. If you're using A minor pentatonic, and I said, hey, let's do a jam in the key of A minor this evening. The three things that you, or the three chords that want to hit your brain cells will be A minor, that's the key you're in, D minor, or I should say A minor or A minor 7. You can interchange those. D minor or D minor 7. And E minor or E minor 7. That's it. It's a minor blues. So all of the principal foundational chords for that blues will be minor as well. So hopefully you can play in A minor. A minor 7 just sounds a bit cooler. It's nice. The D minor can be shifted to D minor 7. If you can play a D minor as a bar chord here at the 5th fret, just release your pinky and you've got D minor 7. Otherwise, you'll be playing like what looks like the upper part of an F chord without the third finger involved, and then just play the same 4 strings. That's a D minor 7 as well. Okay? Same as this. If you can't play any of them, just play D minor. You probably know that one. What I'm trying to get you to do here is to have the skill set in your mind that allows you to go, I can confidently figure out what I'm going to need in order to jam with these people that just told me we're going to do a jam in the key of A blues jam, a minor blues jam. People will say it differently in the key of, if they said blues in A, that usually means major blues. If they say a blues in A minor, that's what it means, right? They could say a minor blues in A. That does not mean A major. It means A minor. Again, we're bumping up against some terminologies and phrases that could confuse you very easily. But So here are the three chords we'll need. I'm going to play them as bar chords here, up at the mostly the 5th fret. I'm just going to shift over here. Good. And I'm playing an A minor 7. I'm not playing A minor with 2 fingers. I'm just taking my pinky away. The rest of it's all barred. Instead of playing the regular D minor, I'll play D minor 7 by releasing my pinky. That exposes another note under the index finger. It's the 7th. That's the one we need. Okay. And then I'm just going to take that shape. If that's D minor 7, why don't I just go, distance from D to E is 2 frets, so why don't I take that and go 1, 2. I should be on an E. Let me check it. A, B, C, D, E. And then you keep the same shape, and you've got your E minor 7. Let's take a listen to the track, and you'll hear this unfolding. Go back. Here we go. D minor 7. I did this. That's the cool factor. E minor, D minor, A minor, E minor. Is this making sense to everybody right now? This is kind of very foundational stuff that you should have floating in your head. We're going to do a jam in the key of A minor. What 3 chords do I need? You've seen me do this before. A minor, A, B, C, D minor, E minor. 1, 4, 5. 1, 4, 5. Got it. Next step. Do I know how to play the typical minor scale that blues players tend to use? The answer is yes. The scale of choice to get started with will be the A minor. That's the connection to those chords. Pentatonic. And you can learn all kinds of licks from other people. That's all well and good. I would prefer that you just, at the beginning of this process, you just get super confident at finding the notes that you like the sound of around the scale, not based on any lickage that you're necessarily knowledgeable in. You're just as capable as putting licks together as anybody else did. Whatever someone does, if other people sort of find it interesting and it catches on fire and it goes viral, that can happen to you just as easily. You could come up with a lick and you show it to somebody and then they show it to somebody and so on. And it grows and it can become a standard. This is one of those standards, this sound. Sorry, where am I here? You hear that all the time in the blues, right? Or that kind of swingy thing, that's a very common effect. Or you will hear these effects all the time. You'll certainly hear double stops and stuff. Anybody can come up with this stuff. You can too. So let's not get hung up and think that you have to learn 100 licks and stitch them together to do a blues and solo over it in a minor key. You do not. What you should do is know the scale you're going to work with and then start, here's the reference again, start going into the sandbox and playing around with it. You cannot just sit with jam tracks and do this. You have to sit with it sometimes quietly on your own and just what's possible here, Stephen? clam. No jam track, just me sitting exploring things. Some I will like, some I won't like. The stuff you like, you'll tend to keep. Stuff you don't like doesn't mean you couldn't do it, because it doesn't mean you couldn't use it. It's just currently you may not like it. Perhaps as your ears mature over time, you may come to like it. Just like certain tastes, right? So same thing. Don't disregard it just because on first initial play you didn't find it attractive. Okay, enough of that. I'm just going to check some comments here. Except for the at chords. It's hard to make sense when the sentences aren't complete. Jerry mentioned in minor, the minor are 2, 4, 6. Again, I know what he's referring to. From the point of view of the C major scale, that would be true. But I don't want you to think of it that way. I want you to think of it exactly the same way you did with the major blues. If you're doing a blues in G, go, okay, I need G, A, B, C, D. G7, C7, D7. Minor blues in A minor. I need A minor, A, B, C, D minor, E minor. Done. Keep it simple. The problem with fragments of information is that it's like shrapnel hitting your brain. Nothing's cohesive. Nothing is connected. The relationship here will be that whatever we did in the major version, the 1, 4, and 5 chord in the key of G, you do exactly the same chemistry in a minor key. To get started, we do some changes once in a while to give it a different kind of a flavor in a minor key. But to get things started, do exactly the same thing. There's your connection. Don't overthink it. It's 1, 4, and 5 in the key of A minor. Simple device, use your hand. Thumb is the 1 chord. Ring finger is the 4 chord. Pinky is the 5 chord. They go together. Done. Later you can come back and reanalyze why that's working so nicely and handsomely. But for the time being, that's your connection. Yeah, maybe one day, not you make it look so easy. Whilst you do that, is there any counting involved? Good question. It's a yes. Tony's question was, while I'm playing and listening to the backing track, is there any counting in my mind going on? The short answer is yes and no. Most of the time, for bluesy type stuff, it's been played so much under my fingers and in my head that I just know where I am in the structure, which we haven't talked about yet. We're going to get to it. In the soloing side of things, there are certain points that I want to head toward, certain notes to head toward, to be played at a certain point in time. That's a conscious choice. And then there are other times when I'm doing exactly that same thing, and I just land on them whenever I land on them. I'm not aware Am I on beat 3? Am I on the and of beat 3? I'm not aware of any of that. But I know where I am in the big picture, as we say, the gestalt of it. You can see the forest for the trees. I know where I am in the structure of the piece. So that should be our next conversation. If we're using the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord from the key of A minor, and please let me know that you know that A minor is the relative minor to the key of C major. So the chords that occurred in the key of C major are exactly the same chords in the key of A minor. They're just starting on A minor instead of C major. The chord C major. It's exactly the same thing. That concept alone eludes a lot of people, and yet it's so foundational to understanding a lot about how all these other things start to get layered on top of one another that confuse most people. Maybe I'll do a little bit of that on Wednesday or Friday. I don't know. But we need to know what the blues structure is now, and I'm talking a very basic blues. Here it is. I'm going to play the 1 chord, which is A minor, for 4 measures. Listen, this is how I'm going to do it, just to demonstrate. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I just played 4 measures with 4 beats inside each measure. And I was counting the beats out for you. Listen again. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm mentally aware that I've gone through 4 measures. Music can be a very visualizing art, mentally visualizing. You have to have an awareness, either through actual counting for a while to get used to it, and eventually it translates into a more of an intuition. If I just sat here 3 in the morning with some friends and I'm just going, I know I'm done and I'm about to go to the next chord. So you could think of it as also just 4 of this done 4 times. That, whatever that is rhythmically, it's just being done 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. I'm repeating it over and over. But every one play of it is 4 beats. That in itself might confuse you. If that awareness of the relationship between what your hand is rhythmically doing and the basic count of beats and the number of measures that go by, if that really bogs you down with regards to understanding how music works in general, then jamming and playing and all this stuff with other people will forever frustrate you, because it has to get to a level where you just know it. It's no different than driving in your car, and you don't have to know the names of the streets anymore. You just know where the store is that you're going to. You just know it. You might even have trouble recalling the streets after a while because it's so imprinted on your brain. You just know how to get there. In fact, you probably have many ways you can get there confidently and never really think about how you got there. So the 1 chord is going to play out for 4 full measures. That's the simple version. For measures 5 and 6, we move to D minor 7 or D minor. And I'll do the same thing. Whatever rhythm I'm doing, I'm going to do it only for 2 measures. After that, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, I come back to A minor or A minor 7. And then I go to measure 9, which is E minor for 1 measure. moving to D minor for the 10th measure, moving to A minor for the 11th, and for now, I'll go back to E minor on measure 12. That's why it's called a 12-bar blues. You're playing out 12 bars. Here's what it sounds like. This is not the way to play it. It's just a way I'm playing it for our demonstration. Here we go. Fifth measure. 6. This is 7. 8. 9. 10. 11. And 12. Whole thing starts again, and we're on our way. Hoping that makes sense. So I'm gonna bring up the backing track again. And I'll do that. And I want you to really listen. And if this format has not gotten deep into your bones yet, that's what you got to keep working on. You've got to get it to the point where you can't get it wrong. It's impossible. If you're always just playing on your own, by the way, I mean, you can do anything you like. Nobody's going to care because nobody hears it. This, it's true. This stuff becomes more critical when you're playing with other people. And that's why it was designed this way, so that it enables everybody who's getting together to do a jam in a blues environment. They know precisely where everybody is going to be at any point in time. They're not making this up as they go, aside from the solo section. But even then, the soloist is keenly aware of where he or she is in the 12-bar form, so that they know there are certain notes they want to hit and certain ways to hit the chords, all kinds of stuff. Awareness, 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 awareness. Where does that come from? Play, 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 play. How much do you have to do? As much as you have to do till it feels like breathing. You don't have to think about it anymore. Everybody's different with regards to that. So let's cue this up. Well, maybe I'll just check the chat first. Yeah, Thrill is gone. You could use that format, and that's a good example of it. Tony, is there any counting involved? Okay. So, and those that study with me, they know as soon as you ask me a question, man, I know I go too long into it. But I know you love me for it too. Okay, so I'm going to play along to the track. You can do this too if you like. And but see if you can anticipate the chord changes. Your ability to do it will be dependent on how well you have the 12-bar blues form in your mind. It starts up here and then it comes out here. It's not something you just train into your muscles of your fingers. It comes from a person. Period. Always will. Always will. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's how it goes. It's pretty straightforward in that regard. Okay, what do I need to hit next? Let me see if the questions. Tony, my guitar goes sat nav. What does sat nav mean? I don't know. I'm not smart in some ways. Okay, let's carry on. Now, let's leave the chords. I'm going to assume you can figure all that stuff out on your own, or you have already. And when it comes to the soloing side of things, what are you going to do? Well, that's where the good old-fashioned minor pentatonic comes into play. That's what we'll start with. Whoops, there we go. And yeah, Carolyn, A minor, D minor, D. Yeah. Well, that's one way to drill it into your head. Write it on a post-it note. Put it on the ceiling so that when you fall asleep at night, you see it. Put it on your mirror in the morning. Put it on your cupboard when you're making lunch. Whatever it takes to get that structure into your mind, that's the important thing. I'm going to play some solo-y stuff using the A minor pentatonic scale. Two different ways. I won't play for the whole track, through the whole track. And I want you to tell me which one, in general, you prefer. The first version or the second version. So, let me cue it up. Here's the first version. I won't play the whole track. Okay, here's the second one. Okay, there you go. Two versions. Tell me which one you like. Can't get to sleep thinking. Tony says he can't get to sleep thinking about all this stuff. It puts me to sleep. Of those two versions, which did you prefer? The first version played correct notes, as did the second version. The first version moved around different strings to find those notes, as did the second version. We're back to phrasing. Yes. Second, it seemed fuller. Okay. So Eric mentioned we're back to phrasing. So let's pretend that many of you perhaps haven't heard of that term, and I'll explain it a bit. By the way, in the first example, basically the notes were unfolding in a kind of ongoing stream of just notes, just hitting notes for the sake of hitting notes. They are notes that are in the scale, but that's it. That's what you're doing. Second is less mechanical. That's what Scott was mentioning. Cool. So I think generally you prefer the sound of the second one. So the game is how can I get you to do that in your own soloing? What needs to be thought about? Here's the best analogy. If we weren't guitar players, but we were trumpet players, and you begin to make notes out of your trumpet, what do you have to do before you start to play? You have to take a breath. So you take your breath, you fill your lungs, and then you play. Not just one note, but, you probably play a cluster of notes for how long, but the length of it is completely determined by when your breath runs out, because you got to take another breath and do it again. In the sense that wind instruments have to function around taking breath, we refer to that moment of playing during a breath as a phrase. So you have that period of time to make up some kind of an interesting musical statement over the time you have the breath. And you don't want to wait too long to end it because you'll just be purple. So, you through experience, you learn to cut the phrase off, relax, take a breath, and come back in. We don't have to do that on a guitar. Any string instrument doesn't have to do that. but you should still attempt to play most of the time as if you did have to do that. And some people actually will literally kind of hum their little thing they're doing under their breath, and then when that breath runs out, their playing will stop. And then they'll think about where they're going to go for the next breath. So they're actually being like a wind instrument. That activity where the musical statement is broken up feels more natural to people when they're listening to it. This is the equivalent of a run-on sentence. 3, 4. Like, just stop. You're killing me. Just stop playing for a moment and let me absorb, the listener, what you just did. So, as opposed to 3, 4. No rush. Come back to that note again. Why not? And then I could take it and go somewhere else with it, or, evolve it. I could do all kinds of things with it. But that's the idea. And the quicker you can inject that into your playing, the more immediately, more, we'll say professional, more soulful you sound. It isn't just a game of hoping you hit the right notes. Hopefully you're past that. It's a game of expressing the sound in a soulful way. Some people are really, really good at this, and other people have to really, really work at it. That's okay. That's just always the case. So phrasing is going to be a big deal when you solo. And of course, I can't watch or listen to any of you do that, so I can't give you feedback on it. But I'll just give you a quick demonstration again, and then we're going to move on to another thing, and then I'll start wrapping this down a bit. So far we've got, okay, I need to know the 3 chords in a minor key. In this case, A minor, D minor, E minor. And that it doesn't stop there, by the way. There's lots of things we can add to that series of the chord progression to make it even more interesting. But we got to start somewhere. Then I need to be able to pull out which type of minor scale will I use to play over these minor chords. Chances are, as guitarists, you're going to choose the minor pentatonic. And the most common in this case is the A minor. It's very guitar friendly. It's a very guitar friendly key. Now we're into the third thing. You need to be able to express the playing of those notes in some kind of a soulful manner using the idea of phrasing. Can't overstate how important phrasing is. Doesn't matter how many times you hear people talk about it. If you've got it, great. Then don't worry. But if this is a new idea for you, use it. something like that. I think you get the idea. Whoop. Pull that back up. Take that down. Good. Okay. Some other things. I could do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just say that's my little phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. To give it a little bit more soul, more bluesy flavor, you can slide in from nowhere. Slide in from nowhere to the note you're going to start the phrase on. So this happens to be the A on the 4th string, or the G. When you do the slide, it's just a sonic mechanism to get your attention. The goal is to get to that G. It isn't to do this. It's not. It's just, it's almost as if as my finger begins, and it doesn't matter where I'm starting. This is the point here. Slide from nowhere. I just happen to be starting lower, but you can start a fret below, 2 frets below, fret and a half, doesn't matter where. But it's kind of like as I'm coming in, I'm adding gradually more and more pressure until I'm in the full pressure position on the note that I want. That's what it feels like to me. So instead of going, nothing wrong with it. You can do that. But why not just do this? It just immediately sounds a little cooler, I think. You can slide down to it if you want, even from nowhere. Right? That's cool. The only thing you have to be good at, which can take some time, is you've got to learn to stop cold on the note you want. It's kind of like, other than first bass, you have to not overrun second and third. You have to land on them. First bass you can run over a little bit, right? So, which is cool. It can be small, it can be large. Doesn't matter. It's just an effect to get to the target note. Do that. Now, once you're there, don't do this. You'll never see any blues players do that when they're on a note for any length of time. There's no point. They're going to be doing this. All right? However they do it. Everybody does vibrato in their own manner. So I always encourage students to go, anytime you've landed on a note for any length of time, if you feel you have the time to execute vibrato, which is the shaking of the string, do it. Do more of it than you think you need to. Let me demo again. Yeah, Tony's asking me, would I play this differently every time? Yeah. Well, when I'm talking to you, Tony, I'm not always saying the same thing, am I? No, of course not. You're still Tony. It's still the same backing track. You're still Tony. I'm just talking to you differently because I have a new idea. And I'll do the same here. But I'm using the same tools, just like my voice is using the same tools. Words, phrases, sentences, inflection. If I get really loud, you might think I'm angry or I'm excited. If I get really soft, I might be a little shy. All of these things can happen here as well. So I don't even remember what I played. And I'll do it differently a second time. Absolutely. So let's check out some vibrato here. Phrase. Oh, bad clam note. Don't like that one. You get the idea, right? I also did which I'll talk about shortly. I did a bend I did a vibrato on a bend. I did the bend, and once I got to where I needed to be, then I went. It's also very cool. So vibrato. Now I'm not talking about how to do that today. I'm just giving you ideas to think about. All of these things make your blues soloing sound more interesting. Let's talk about bending. When it comes to bending, particularly in this particular scale, what I always recommend people do first is get used to doing the bend on the third string off the 7th fret. And what you're doing is you're bending the 7th fret note. Anybody know what that note's called? Let me know in the chat. 7th fret, 3rd string. I'm bending it to the sound of the 8th fret. So it sounds like this. Here's the sound of the 8th fret. And I'm going to go to it from the 7th fret. That's the goal of bending for the time being. It's not bending for bending's sake. Sometimes it is, but not right now. Right now, you're trying to train your hand and your ears to land precisely on the pitch that you want. Now, we're not always successful at it, but we can adjust it in real time as we hear it. This is too far. There's nothing wrong with it. That's a whole step bend. It could be too flat, which actually kind of always sounds good. I'll talk about that in a second. But this one, going from the sound of the 7th fret to the sound of the 8th fret, is something you want to control. However you want to do it. You can push up, you can pull down. People have a misunderstanding of this, by the way. Whether you're pulling the string down or pushing it up, it's the same effect. You're just tightening the string, so the pitch will always rise. If I take a string and hit it and pull it down, the pitch goes up. It doesn't matter that I'm moving toward the floor. There's that relationship that people get confused about. I don't tend to pull. Some do, but I don't. I tend to push more upward. I guess it feels more intuitive. So I would always start with what's called the half-step bend, going from one note to the next note, a semitone above. And Jerry hit it. It's a D to an E flat, or a D to a D sharp. Depends on the context. Yep, that's good. You're paying attention. So that's what I recommend. You get good at that. Now the mechanics of it, I'm not going to dwell on right now, but I will tell you, I'm not just using my third finger in this case to get to that note. I'm actually planting at least another one, sometimes two, on the same string, and I'm using the strength of all three to bend the note that the third finger is actually pitching. It's much easier to do than to just take the note itself with one finger and have to engage the strength of that finger to do it. And the reason this is a better idea is you have more control of the bend. Because you have more muscle behind it. So, we can talk about that at a certain point. So there's the half-step bend, which is the sound of the note right next door. Then you can go to the sound of a note that's 2 frets higher. That's a whole tone. You can even go a minor third higher. Sometimes you'll break a string. I've done it many times. There it is. It's quite aggressive. You really have to push or pull to pull it out. But once you get a feel for it, it's quite impressive to people. They love how far that string's been pushed, and then you come back home again, and everything sounds really good. Okay, the last thing, well, two last things. I want to talk about is why are you confined, we aren't, to hitting single notes from the scale? You can at any time you like hit 2 consecutive strings from that scale. Sorry? Have a ZZ Top vibe. Don't overdo it, but you can throw them in, and they usually produce, if you have some distortion on your guitar, a little bit, some nice, a nice distorted quality. And if you grab them and just bend them, just having fun, even though it doesn't fit necessarily the theory of doing bending to the next note in a scale such as such, it still works, but we're not talking about that today. So you can do that. You could be playing, doing this. So that's cool. That sort of idea. Okay, final point. Tons of stuff, I know. You got to get into the sandbox. If there's one thing you can take away from this whole series that I've kept repeating is you have to go to the sandbox. You've got to start pushing stuff around under your own terms, as well as picking up other stuff from other people. Nothing wrong with it. But if you don't do this on your own to figure out how you're going to do it so that your sound comes out, and let's pretend, for example, you fancy yourself a novelist. If a novelist only copied other people's novels, they're not really a novelist. You need the ability to take what other people have done and then manipulate it into your own world. Otherwise, you'll just sound like everybody else out there. You don't want that. Plus, you won't experience the level of creativity that you, I think, would like to enjoy. But people get very intimidated by this whole process. Well, okay, maybe at the beginning for sure. But just don't let anybody into your sandbox for a while. Just say, nope, just for me. And you explore within the limits of what you know. And in that exploration, you're going to find some stuff you like. And generally, when you find that, you tend to want to repeat it. And if you repeat it enough, it becomes yours. It's your thing that gets put into your music. That is missing a lot from instruction these days. So keep that in mind. The very last thing I want to chat about is, let me come back here. Get rid of that. Can anybody tell me, if you're looking at the image right now, why the A notes in the scale? Well, first of all, did you know they were there? But more importantly, why they're highlighted. I'm going to play on the jam again, and hopefully you'll be able to recognize why. So I'm going to go from the beginning. Okay. So, why are the A notes? What's the relationship that I just played out there? Anybody got that figured out? Because it is, well, they are the root notes. They are the root notes of the A minor 7 or A minor chord. More technically, yes, Scott, that's correct. They're the tonic notes. Tonic refers to the beginning note of a scale, so that's true. Passing blue notes. No, they are not passing blue notes. The blue notes, if you look back on the major session that we did, they occur between the in the key of G, between the C and the D note. So D flat on the 5th string, and the same D flat up on the 3rd string. So the same would be true here. Blue notes, E flat and E flat. Those notes are not blue notes. They are blue, if that's what you're referencing. I'm getting a sense of Tony's humor now, but they are not blue notes. But they are blue notes. They're passing. Sorry, wrong. A root notes. No, you were kind of right if you were being like a funny guy. So, point here is that I was focusing on those A notes during my awareness of hearing the A minor chord. Once again, listen up. I'll bring it back, and I'll stop when the chord changes. A note. Phrasing. A note again. A note again. Here it comes. I moved to a D note. Why? Because the chord went to D minor or D minor 7. I want the audience to hear that I'm paying attention to what the band is doing. Can you hit anything you like? You know what? Sure you can. It's the minor pentatonic scale. It's designed in a sense to get you to sound artificially good at what you're doing without actually knowing why it sounds so good. So it's a very satisfying scale in that regard. Everything you hit will generally sound okay. But as I've said many times before, in a key, in a scale, not all notes are created equal. And so you should cultivate the ability to shift the focus of your focus to, at the beginning anyway, at least the root note of the chord that you're moving to. Find that within the scale, if it exists. Sometimes the note doesn't exist. You're going to have to find another one, and it'll sound good anyway. So what's happening is, keep an eye on the image here, as you play for a while, at some point, I stop seeing the scale that way, and I start to see it this way, when the D minor chord comes up. And I'm going to start to focus, more often on the D notes than the other ones. I don't want you to kill the D notes by playing them just by themselves, but you can do whatever you want in between, but you could generally do well to play your phrases and end them on a D. And then when the E comes around, that's how I see the scale. That's what's going on in my mind. So sometimes it's E, sometimes it's D, sometimes it's A. The other notes are all well and good, but try to focus on the changes. Now I'm going to play again, let you hear this, and we're almost done. Hang with me here. Let me cue this up. It doesn't mean it's a rule. I'm not suggesting this is not. This is a guiding principle to help you get more unified in your soloing as you listen to the chords unfold. And, of course, it raises your awareness of how the scale functions. Let's do this. I went right to an A. Back to an A. D. Back to a D. Went to an A octave. E, D, A, E. That sort of idea. Immediately you start to sound better. You just sound in control of what's going on. Okay, last point I want to make is, let me pull that down. Just like we mentioned, whoops, did that wrong. There are the blue notes in that particular scale. This is the value of shape, where you can visually locate them. They're always, in that particular form of the scale, the blue notes will exist on the fifth string between, in this case, the D and the E, so E flat. And then you continue up to the third string, and when you hit the D, you go one fret higher. I usually use my pinky, and I'm on another E flat. They're an octave apart, so there aren't two notes that are being added. There's only one note in two different places. The addition of this is making the scale sound even more voice-like, vocal-like. So you're getting the sounds that people do when they sing blues and jazz and stuff. Excuse me. So those blue notes, of course, give you that real hunk of bluesy sound right away. There you go. There's a lot to it, in a way, and then there isn't. Everything's just kind of there. You've got the scale, you've got the chords. You dig deeper into each of those elements to pull out more ideas that you probably haven't thought about before. One last note I will leave you with is that's just one way to play A minor pentatonic. There are lots of ways to play it, but the most common approach is to engage in a system referred to as the caged system so that you get 5 different ways of playing A minor pentatonic. So for example, here's A minor pentatonic. Whoop. And you can hear the focus on A. Here's another. Here's the one you guys know. Here's another. And another. And one more. Oops. When you get all 5 of these things stuck in your brain, should you choose to do that, now you have a template, a visual template, a mental template that will allow you to move around the fretboard with more ease. I'm not suggesting that just because I mentioned this that it happens quick. You've got to build on it over time. But you start with what we did here, and then you add a second one into the mix, probably one of the patterns that exist on either side of that one, and you build it into your ice rink. This is the ice rink I now skate on. And as you get more information, you get to skate on more ice instead of just around the face-off circle. That's what I've got for you today, my friends. Do you have any questions? I'm going to go through the chat right now. Passing blue notes, sorry, wrong. A root notes. Good, good. I wish I could differentiate one chord from another. I blame hearing aids, but that might be B. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't have experience with that, Carolyn, so I don't know how to comment on it. My thinking would have been that hearing aids are supposed to make things sound more clear, not make things sound more muddy. Can you go to C chord from E flat like you did with the G? Do you mean notes or chords, Tony? Oh, I know what you're thinking. I think. Hold on a second. C to E flat. Well, no. I'm not sure what the question is. Are you asking me to go from a C chord to an E flat chord? Is that what you want me to do? It's a cool sound. Do most blues players call these the 5 box? Well, it's not a blues thing. It's just a guitar thing. But yes, they'll say the 5 boxes. That's correct. Yeah, I don't like the term box because it boxes you in. The purpose of those boxes is to help you learn the scale in that portion of the neck, and then over time dissolve the box away. But most people stay in the boxes. They get stuck there. When can I get my own bubble? My wife had that done for me for a birthday a number of, where am I pointing to here, years ago. And yeah, that's when I just had a goatee. Now I'm full on just hairy bearded guy. By the way, Tony, the word chord is spelled C-H-O-R-D. It's not a chord like a plug-in cord, electric cord. So why don't you send me a message, Tony? Let me know what you actually mean by the C to E flat. You've stumped me there. But if there aren't any other questions, we'll leave it there for now. As usual, thank you guys for taking the time to hang with me. I know I take these a bit long. If you want me to shut them down quicker, let me know. You won't hurt my feelings, and I will do so. I'll make sure that I can structure them so that they don't go quite so long. I just like to give you the right information as best I can. That's what my ting is. No, from the E flat note to the C. From E flat to C. Oh, I see. So are you talking within the G minor pentatonic? No, I'm not even thinking that. E flat to C. Oh. Yeah, send me a message. I know what you're talking about now. Yes, the same is true. It doesn't matter where that occurs, by the way. It's a device that helps you figure out the major and relative minor stuff. But send me a note. We'll talk about that. Yeah, so leave me any comments below in the notes underneath the vid. Let me know what you thought. Share it around if you're interested in helping spread the word of this lonely guy out in Canada trying to do some stuff. And I'm just a little fish in a big pond right now, and I would love to have you guys help me get to be a bigger fish. I don't need to be the biggest. I just need to be a bit bigger. So share the video. Let people know what's going on in this little corner, and I'll continue to help as best I can. Steve Dempster, Dempster Guitar Studio. We'll figure out what I'm doing on Wednesday. Thank you again. Stay healthy. Talk to you soon. Bye, guys. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that.